Hello and welcome to Convergence Networks, Cybersecurity in Manufacturing with a focus on AI. I hope you're all doing well today. Um, welcome. Welcome. Next slide, please. My name is Terry Kruger. I'm in charge of revenue generation and new business sales. I work for Convergence Networks. I've been doing this for over a decade and have a special focus on the manufacturing industry. I've worked with a bunch of complex frameworks such as CMMC, and then also helped companies in the manufacturing space develop long-term goals, including what to do with technology, how to use technology more efficiently, and what other people are doing. On my right, you have John Stevens. John Stevens is a security guru. He's a CISO for us. He has over 20 plus years of IT and security experience. He helps manufacturers meet a variety of standards and compliance frameworks, such as NIST, DFARS, CMMC. He designs security programs that protect operations and support regulatory needs. He is the most fun CISO to talk to on a daily basis, and I don't know very many of those. Kevin Dodson is on his right. Hey, Kevin, how's it going? He's a vCISO, so he interacts with clients on a daily basis. He has over 15 years of experience and has a wealth of knowledge in manufacturing, including working in manufacturing directly. He is very knowledgeable on standards like ISO 9001, CMMC, NIST, DFARS, and also has worked in the defense and supply chain. Moving on. A little bit about us. We're Convergence Networks. We are a security first IT firm. We've been founded since the year 2000, been around for about 25 years. We provide local support and have about 250 people on staff. Roughly 80% of those people are technical in nature, and we deliver IT services, security services, and what I'd consider digital transformation, such as AI and modern work, to over 400 companies in North America. What makes us a little bit unique is that we take a secure first approach to every technology that we use within our clients. And so that's going to be the approach that we take today. We are specifically going to be talking about cybersecurity at the C-level, why it demands boardroom priority, the true cost of not doing anything with cybersecurity. So how much could it cost you if you don't do anything? Modern threat entry points, foundations of a modern defense, how to unlock AI responsibly, and that's a big one, and reimagining the manufacturing future that you could have while utilizing AI. We will save some time at the end of this presentation to ask us questions. I do encourage you to ask questions when it is time. If you have to leave early, you can always email us. Our contact information will be at the end of this too. We're happy to get back with you, whatever information you need. So manufacturing, astonishingly, is the #1 target for cyber attacks out of all industries. And the reason why attackers know manufacturers often have a bunch of different things that make them susceptible to targets. John, what are some things that make manufacturing industry more susceptible than other industries out there?
Sure. And so as we talk about this, we're talking about some of these independent points, but you have to realize that they are often present in multiples. In other words, this is commonalities for manufacturing. And in fact, it may not just be one of them. So, for example, we all have to realize that, when you're running a manufacturing facility, you probably have machines that have to do something, right? It's all about manufacturing, whether it's cutting, molding, stamping, whatever. But oftentimes those systems are where manufacturers spend their money. And so the systems that connect to that to let the people interface with it can sometimes not get as much attention. So they may be outdated. Similarly, Oftentimes, manufacturers don't have dedicated cybersecurity teams. And also, the other part that's really important is manufacturing is all about production. So they don't like to take systems down and take the production offline, even to do things like maintenance. And then finally, the attackers have really realized that it is an entire supply chain when you're talking about manufacturing. And oftentimes those supply chains are connected with ERP or access into other environments in order to be able to streamline the supply chain. So in fact, if you can take out a manufacturer, you may be not just getting one company, you may be able to affect their entire supply chain.
Wow, that's some great insight. That's some great insight. And you're absolutely right. I've seen it time and time again where manufacturing folks that are in the industry are prioritizing production over long-term goals, like making sure that it is secure production. And so have many stories to tell about people that haven't prioritized those security.
Absolutely.
Next slide. So what's the real world impact of a breach, John?
Sure. So every year there are studies done on the statistics from the previous year. And, no surprise, every year when they look at those studies, the cost of breaches and the impact on businesses continues to go up. For example, in the US, an average cost of data breach is now up to $9.36 million. So just think about that as a chunk off your business for the year. And in fact, this is still a high number, but when you focus just on mid-sized organizations, it's still over $3 million. So what we're really talking about is this huge financial impact. And part of the reason why it tends to be so bad is that by and large, when breaches are undertaken, oftentimes the manufacturers don't have the tools to detect it. And so this results in a dwell time in the environment of over 200 days. And then that's just to detect it. And then once it is identified, it can take upwards of 70 days for the organization to take steps to mitigate that and to try to contain it. So this huge cost plus a huge dwell time gives the net result that, in fact, 60% of small to medium-sized businesses will go out of business within 6 months of a breach. We're talking about game over, you're done. You don't get to fix it again, you're just done.
That's incredible. That's an alarming statistic, 60%. And so there's also statistics that are out there in the industry that show that once you've been breached, you may be breached again. And this increases the amount of businesses that may go out of business. So moving on. There's more than just a physical cost, so money that needs to be spent on a breach to either replace equipment or restore data, etc. What should be looked at in terms of total cost of what a breach is in today's world?
Sure. So, it is true that almost all of these costs will eventually result in dollars, right? But it's hard to exactly measure the dollar impact when you're talking about things like your brand reputation is damaged. You may not be able to win business. So this isn't just affecting current contracts. It may prevent you from getting future contracts. And then, of course, anytime you have to notify folks that there's a breach, it's a sad state of affairs, but it's the truth nowadays that people hear about a breach darn near every day, sometimes multiple times a day. You don't want to be one of those organizations that has to go to your clients and vendors and say, "Hey, we were breached," right? That all feeds into that damaged brand reputation. And of course, if you are in a regulated industry, which that is increasingly common, you have to worry about, hey, how does this affect my security audits? Am I going to be able to pass them? And just as a note, it's not just security. You might have quality standards in place, and this can impact that too. If your data is not secured, it can actually impact whether or not you can do the job, which can impact quality. So all of these things wrap into those costs. Yeah, and it's a hard place to be, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And from, me looking at it from a new business perspective and a lens from that standpoint.
Absolutely. And so,
What
Kevin,
I've
since
seen
he's
in
our
real world
expert,
is being disqualified from bidding. Absolutely. Kevin, why don't you share us the story of a time that this happened?
So I've worked with several organizations over the past few years that have been impacted or recovered from, cyber attacks or cyber incidents. Many times, what we see is not only, like you said, like John mentioned, the brand reputation that is impacted, which can cost you revenue from a sales and further operations, but you also look at the internal costs associated with those vendors that you're working with. Many times that database that's back in that has gotten compromised may contain other information with your partners and other organizations that you've been collaborating with, and you open up those organizations for risk as well. You can lose partnerships, which thus increase the cost of doing business for your organization to get supply demand. In particular, I had one organization that a user account compromised for an employee in just the shipping and receiving department, who had excessive access to the back-end databases, resulted in a freeze in the business operations across the entire organization. The shipping and receiving operations shut down, the production operations shut down, manufacturing and other administrative functions, resulting in lost revenue related to time internally, lost revenue related to customer orders going out on time. Customer relationships are impacted by that, and these are all just based off of small nuances of access and other security breach.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And that covers, what we're going to talk about next. If you switch the slides, please. There's only so much disruption a business can absorb. And so when you're looking at disruption, it can come in many different places in terms of a security breach. John, what do you think these places are? And can you give us a little bit more insight into them?
Sure. So, we talked about the dollars. We've talked about how that can impact a business. And, ultimately, when we have to look at the impacts beyond just the dollar values. But, you might say, oh, well, the first thing on your list is regulatory fines, and that's all about the dollars. Well, it may not just be the fines. It's not unheard of that it draws more attention so that they're looking at you more closely. Also, if you go to have insurance to ensure that you can live through another breach, you may find yourself denied if you don't have the necessary security programs in place. Of course, if you're a business, you're probably manufacturing something, and really what gives you your business edge is your intellectual property, your how do we do it? What if that's stolen? And as Kevin was just mentioning, there's a ripple effect. It's not just you, it can ripple throughout the supply chain, not only impacting your partners in terms of maybe you're working on some of their data, but what if you can be a source of entry for those other organizations? Overall, when you look at this, how much disruption can you absorb? This really speaks heavily to that 60% of small to medium sized businesses will go out of business.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And so when we're looking at this, if we move on, we talk about risk management and how to deal with risk. And what you do a fantastic job working with our team internally on is managing our risk. So, what are the steps that you can do with risk, and what would you recommend folks do?
Sure. So, one of the things that people often make the mistake of assuming is that all data is equal. And so they spend a lot of effort to protect everything. Well, the first question we usually have to ask when we start working with an organization is, well, do you have to keep this data? Do you have to do this? If there is something that is causing you risk, can you simply avoid it? Can you quit doing it? Is it necessary for your process? And so it sounds so stupid simple. It doesn't even seem like it's something we should be talking about in the 21st century, but it's still the case. If you've got sensitive data, but you get rid of it when you no longer need it, you've avoided the risk of keeping it safe. However, as a lot of times we can't get that option, we work on mitigations or reducing risk, and you can see that that's depicted on the high probability, and we want to reduce that probability, that risk level, to something that the business can actually accept in an informed manner. Because ultimately, what you're trying to do is, if you can't avoid it, and you reduce the risk to an acceptable level, that's when you can say, okay, we can move forward. Now, there's some things that you just can't see through. You can't reduce it enough. And that's where we have the transfer risk option with insurance. And ultimately, it's depicted as 4 separate blocks, but it's actually a process where you're always trying to do this. And this ties into what we were talking about earlier with, hey, that ripple effect. Well, you gotta think about all these things together. Ultimately, if we don't manage the risk, it will manage us out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more risk we reduce, the less it costs to transfer it. And so it's this cycle that keeps going on. And it's important that, security is a journey. It's not a destination. And so every year you need to look at this. Where's your risk? How are you managing it? And what could happen if something goes wrong? But speaking of things going wrong, what are areas that you see in the next slide, if you move on, where there could be entry points for someone to get involved or get into a manufacturing facility in today's world? It's not like my house anymore, right? From what I understand, is it seems to be growing. I've just got a front and a back door and a garage door, and sometimes my wife only allows me to come in the back door, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, so that's a great analogy. And it's even better because you didn't mention Windows. And, ultimately, that's what we're talking about, is any entry point that a hacker or an attacker can use, whether it's technical, like weak or reused passwords or lack of MFA, or whether it's something physical, like you don't close your doors. I've seen manufacturers that, because here in the Northwest, it gets hot during the summer, they open their doors, but they don't have somebody watching. And so it's really a challenge. And all of these points here, each of them can be used as an individual entry, but they compound together when used, when there's multiple points that an attacker can use. And so with that, we can probably switch it over to Kevin for a more tied in statement of how he's seen these entry points abused, both maybe together or separately.
Yes, thank you very much. If you think about it, security is in depth, right? There are layers to what we're trying to get done here. Many manufacturing organizations have quite a bit of turnover. There's seasonal operations where you're turning individuals up and down across the organization, bringing in temporary staff and so on and so forth. And many of the things that we're doing that are now automated include many of these items, weak passwords or things done, lack of MFA across the organization. All of the exposed points you see here can be used in a consolidated method to open your organization up to additional risks from not only the external vendors or external users, but internal stakeholders within the organization walking out with product and materials or causing your organization harm. So many times we have to give a holistic approach or a holistic view of how hackers can enter our organization. Many of these are just open areas that we don't often look at from a risk standpoint, or just assume that they're automatically happening. And you know what they say about making assumptions, never a good thing to do in business or in risk.
Absolutely agree with you. So although some of these items that are listed on the slide are commonplace, and your IT professionals, internal or external, may be talking about them with you over and over and over again, on the next slide is some crazy statistics about some of those basics that you think that every organization would have, or people, end users would have implemented already. So John, how secure are your passwords?
Well, in a word, Terry, they're generally not. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of the most common things that we run into, and I've seen these abused out in the wild. Um, you know, the first statistic: 72% of individuals don't change the default name or password of their router. And you might say, well, who cares? It's not accessible. Well, what if it's a Wi-Fi router? What if somebody can reach it? Um, as a former penetration tester, the number of times that I've gotten onto equipment which established a beach hold in the environment using a default password, it's frankly disgusting, but it happens. And that's why the statistic is so high, 72%. Of course, the other problem is people, because we have such a plethora of passwords to keep track of, we tend to, what I call, do the stupid human tricks where we do things like use something that we can't possibly forget, like our name or our birthday in the password. Well, if the attackers know who they're targeting, they're probably going to be able to guess that. Similarly, 78% of individuals will use the same password across multiple accounts. In other words, hey, I'm going to have my Facebook password be the same as my work password, which, by the way, is also my online banking password. And guess what? If any of those organizations, even the ones that you don't think you need a strong password for, are breached, but you're reusing that password, holy mackerel, it's like you've just given them the keys to the kingdom. And that actually goes right hand in hand with our last stat, where 79% of individuals share passwords with people outside of their home. Think about that. The very key that gets you into your organization may be shared with folks inside the home that don't work for you. So those are just
Yeah,
the stupid human parts, right?
yeah, absolutely. And what you'll see in the next slide is statistical data about how easy it is to crack passwords based on length and complexity. And so, John, with the emergence of supercomputers, what are we seeing in the industry today?
Well, so if you look at this chart, you can see up in the top left, purple, and it's filled with instantly. Modern computers can practically instantly, to us, it's instantaneously. It happens so fast you can't even tell. The computer might give you a little bit of a time hack to say, hey, it took X number of milliseconds, right? But if you've got an 8-character password that's numbers only, for example, it gets cracked instantly. Similarly, you can have a character that has numbers, or a password with numbers, upper and lowercase letter symbols, but if your length is only 4 characters, that's also instantaneous. So we actually are looking to build a longer password, is what this slide basically points to, which a lot of times people don't like to hear. But if you look down in the lower right quadrant, you can see that even modern computers can take far longer than any of us have to attack a manufacturer, or any other business. Basically, your goal is to make it so that your key is secure, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that being said, we've covered, areas that they could get in, but the attack surface itself is actually changing. Kevin, walk us through what a normal attack surface is and what people should be concerned about for their business.
Roger that. Well, if you look at this slide, you think about it from a standpoint of reconnaissance. What you're seeing in the first layer is how they figure out how to get into your business. Like if they're walking around your house, looking through your windows, checking your door locks and doorknobs, trying to see if you are as secure as you say you are. That's what's going around here. Internet of Things or collaborative tools, all of these things lend themselves to figuring out what your organization is doing, what the landscape or the spread of your surface is. Next, they're going to use these next modern attack perimeters to say, hey, can I get in through your cell phone? Social media, figure out your cell phone because we're looking there, find their way into your databases through that, compromise your credentials, turn their way in to get to your endpoints where you're automatically using a phishing attack to download something on your computer. And guess what? They're sitting in the middle of your corporate network. looking at all of your sensitive data, exfiltrating that, stopping your environment, and at the end of the day, looking for ransomware. They're looking for the easy way to get you to have to pay. So as we talk about the attack surface, you've got to be able to look at this in a very detailed and in-depth way. They can take any number of ways into your environment to learn about your leadership and learn about your small man that's working in the shipping and warehouse department, like we talked about before, and figuring out how can I use them to get into your environment, to get to your next person, because you may not even be the end goal of the attack. It could be to get into your system to get to your vendor. So these are all things that you have to think about across the entire organization, across the entire segment that you're working in. You know, credentials matter, network segmentation, packing and auditing, all of that impacts how you can protect yourself from these bad actors.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we've seen over the years is this attack surface expand, and it's expanding rapidly. And so it's impossible for one person to know all these areas unless they're a trained professional in security, what to look for, how people can get in. And so what I'd encourage everybody to do, if you do not have an in-house security expert, to work with a trusted partner that has a history of identifying what your attack surface is, identifying what your risk profile could be, and developing a cybersecurity structure that matches your business tolerance for risk and the type of work that you do.
Terry, if I could say on that same note, just to interject, if you think about it, with the breadth of work that is involved in securing an organization, many of the professionals are overworked, overburdened, right? So having that additional set of eyes from somebody who's qualified that can assist you is an important piece. Many of the clients I work with have CTOs and other high-level executives, and they're just looking for, hey, what am I missing? What haven't I seen out of this attack vector that my program is not currently showing me? So getting someone help is always advisable.
Yeah, absolutely, because they can come in a number of different ways.
Roger
And
that.
so, especially with the emergence of AI and the way that the dark web has worked with programs that you could buy that just execute and attack people that are in the marketplace today, we need to be using the right technology, understand what's susceptible, and then use smart layered approach to what a security posture looks like. So walk us through what zero trust discipline is and how it could affect, including the layers of security.
Well,
Sure.
talk.
So
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll set you up, Kevin. So, on that last slide, we saw that the attack surface has expanded. There's more areas that you have to cover. It used to be all you need to do is keep people out of your facility, right? Well, once you connect the internet and all of this mobile workspace and all of this modern work, the way things have changed, you just like there's a much broader attack surface, you have to protect more. And getting into those specific layers, that's where I'll throw it back to Kevin because he can speak to the details of what he's seeing working with clients.
Roger that. As we mentioned before, we always talk about the perimeter, understanding what your broad scope is, what the outside of that nut that you're trying to protect looks like. Then turning around and coming down to that, I'm a candy guy, so I love candy. So if you think about that M&M, that chocolate in the middle, there's seven layers that you need to secure across your organization to ensure that all of your crown jewels stay safe. If you look at it, once you get down to the network and the endpoints, your users, the applications, everything that you need to do, you have to have a robust program that says, I don't trust my perimeter, so I need to be able to monitor my network. I don't trust my network, so I need to make sure I'm looking at my endpoints. I'm not quite sure about my endpoints, so I need to make sure my applications are working properly. And I'm not sure about that either. So who is getting into the application and how do I validate who that person is? And furthermore, is my data encrypted? Is it secure? Is the information that's passing through all of these layers locked down and tight? And lastly, what is the users? Are they aware of all of the holes in the program, all the possible issues that could come at them? Are they looking at phishing campaigns? Are they looking at the possibility of someone sent me a text message asking me if I wanted a new job? And that text message is while I'm at work and it's on the system and they're connected to the Wi-Fi. And guess what? Am I opening up the environment? These are all parts of creating that zero trust environment to say trust but verify. I don't trust anybody, so I'm gonna verify that it's working appropriately, and that works best in a program that is well documented, working together as a well-oiled machine to make your manufacturing work well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a 6-year-old son, and he's heard me say many, many times it takes a layered approach, and he calls it the Shrek approach. Like an onion has many different layers. So it takes a Shrek to make sure that all these things are covered. Um, yeah. So do you have any specific stories about how someone missed one of these components around not protecting a certain layer, where someone's been, specifically a victim of cybercrime?
I personally do have. One client I worked with in the healthcare industry actually had where their finance team did not validate the information that was passing back and forth. Instead of validating it, they changed end users' direct deposit, or didn't validate the information that was shared, and turned around and changed that out. And this person didn't receive a paycheck for several months. I had another manufacturer that I worked with that I know we talked about earlier about the credential stuffing, but I had one that their senior leader was keeping all of their intellectual property on a laptop that he kept where the data or the formulas were saved on his desktop. Unfortunately, he allowed his use of the internet to allow someone to download files onto his computer and turned around and stole the intellectual property and shared it external to the organization. These are often happening, and securing that basically comes from looking at not only your endpoint security but your network. What network are you on? Are you joining a coffee shop? I'm a Starbucks guy. I don't go to Starbucks and get on their network. I use my hotspot or my phone because I know there could be any Joe Schmo sitting in the corner waiting for me to connect to a fake internet and surfing my credentials and communications while I'm sitting there. So these are all areas that I've actually seen in real life happen, and we often advise that when we talk about awareness training, these are the things that you need to be aware of, not only your physical surroundings but your network security.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the story. And so, we talked about this ever evolving world of cybersecurity. And so, in the next slide, what we're going to walk you through is that things are changing very rapidly. And with the emergence of AI, we're seeing change happen at a frequency that we've never seen before. And so, with that change in technology, um, it affects the threat landscape. So, John, walk us through what these are and what to be mindful of.
Sure, absolutely. So, um, I think most folks have probably heard the term shadow IT, and that has become an increasingly common thing because so many applications and software platforms can be purchased on a subscription and integrated into a workflow without maybe even IT knowing about it. That's where the term originates. Well, it's great, but it's getting worse because with the advent of the advent of AI, it has become that much more powerful. So now, not only is it possible to subscribe to an app and get it implemented into a workflow without IT knowing about it, then we can add AI to make it all that more powerful, all that more impactful, all that more difficult to secure because folks are using it and not realizing the impacts, whether that be adding company data into an AI prompt that then goes to who knows where, or whether it be turning it loose if it's a agentic AI to do stuff and not fully understanding it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how are they using AI to impersonate folks?
Sure. So, I don't know whether everybody's heard. It's a couple weeks old at this point, but there was an AI deepfake of Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently, and you might say, well, okay, what does that mean? Well, the deepfake is where AI is used to basically they go out and they get images or video or audio of a person, and then they throw it through the AI software that can then make it appear to be talking, using the right voice inflection, using the person's image, and they can make a very convincing, basically an attack that's premised on somebody that you know and trust is telling you to do something or having you manipulate information or send information. And whereas before we used to talk about, social engineering in terms of phishing, for example, and it was always restricted to email, and then it graduated to things like telephone calls and SMS text messages. Well, now you actually have to not only be worried about, hey, the combat to all that was to verify with somebody in person. Well, now they can make AI produce a deep fake so that when you're trying to verify, you think you're talking to somebody, whether it be over the phone or on video, and that's not actually them. It's something that AI is generated to sound and look and basically be that person, but it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the emergence of AI, like I talked about earlier, is basically when this goes through is AI is making it easier to get into the bad actor game. And so it's selling for a lot cheaper because it's easier to go through and acquire this software and these packages to then deploy to the masses. And we also talked a little bit about, this evolution of the computing system. John, what is quantum decryption and how is that impacting people today?
Sure. So, we talked about password cracking as one example and how it modern computers were able to do processing and cracking so much faster than computers even 5 or 10 years ago. Well, quantum is like that on steroids because the quantum computers are so much more powerful and so much faster with their processing that things that used to be impossible to crack aren't impossible to crack anymore. And so when they refer to quantum decryption, our encryption algorithms that we use to protect our data, both at rest and in transit, they are strong when you look at them through the lens of modern computing. They are appropriately configured and have enough strength so that we're looking at multiple years, decades, or even centuries to decrypt things, and thus you're relatively safe that in our lifetime your data is not going to be breached in at least by just the rapid decryption. Well, when we factor quantum computers, because they're so much faster, so much powerful, the old rules no longer apply. They can tear through modern encryption, or will be expected to, in much faster times. And so the information that used to be adequately protected, facing against a quantum equipped adversary, it won't work anymore. And so we have to be looking ahead to basically, to throw a hockey analogy, you don't skate to the puck, you skate to where the puck's going to be. You have to be prepping now so that you are using systems that are going to be resilient in the face of these much more powerful and advanced systems.
Great. That's a great answer. And so we have a question that came in that says, I work at a warehouse automation integrator leading our Industry 4.0 strategy. And a big part of Industry 4.0 is connecting the plant floor to the cloud for data-driven decision-making, which is a great use of AI. The biggest challenge are our manufacturing clients' IT department that simply say no to any of our equipment being connected securely to our facilities over a secure VPN tunnel. The clients say, this is the policy, no remote connections. So the question is, how can integrators approach the conversation differently to enable collaboration instead? It is difficult to implement modern operational technology in manufacturing when IT departments of other organizations can limit implementation. Any guidance around this would be helpful. So do you have any guidance for them, either John or Kevin?
I'll give a brief pause to see if Kevin wants to jump on this.
I can. I'm having, I don't know, system issues, but I can actually speak to that. So when you look at integration, it sounds like the issue that you're having is the definition of what remote access needs to look like, or what's the requirement for that, whether it's inbound or outbound. Understanding that device encryption and or specific uh, data mapping or data integrations need to be mapped out and discussed with the client. What are we looking to get out of this situation? Why are we needing it? And explaining that to the IT team, that the exception is going to be a monitored API or integration that has limited access for only what information needs to pass back and forth. Many times these organizations will open up a big old hole in their environment instead of giving specific port specific information and monitoring that integration. So those are often what I have dealt with. John?
The,
Yeah.
the other way that I'd look at this too, the other way that I would look at this too, and not to spend too much time because we've got a couple more things to get through today, is what regulations you have to adhere to and what you need to follow from a cybersecurity standards of what you would be held to for your agreements comes first, right? Then after that, it's how to work within an environment successfully with other providers in a means that works for both parties. If you are overly prescriptive on what you need people to do, you could be a hard vendor to work with and in turn lose business on the flip side. So it's a balancing act that needs to be managed. And that's where that risk profiling comes into. What type of risk are you willing to accept and or mitigate or transfer in this entire process? It's very important to be clear about how this impacts the business if you're going to make any security exceptions, because people like John will come in and say, we can't do it. We just can't do it.
But it's funny because that's a reputation that security often gets, is they're the department of no. But what we all have to realize is we're all on the same team. It does a business no good to secure itself if it secures itself out of business, if it can't be nimble and get the job done, right? And so one of the things that it's really critical for organizations to understand is cybersecurity isn't a technical problem, it's a business problem, and it needs to be handled like any risk. And if there is something that needs to be done, specifically, we need to expand our use of technology. We need to make sure we can communicate with partners. And somebody saying, no, we can't do that. Well, that's probably because it's being phrased as a technical issue over which IT probably feels like it has the right to say no. Instead, it should be a business case that is put together. And the question that we really want to answer is not, can we do this, but how can we do this securely?
All right. So now that we've covered security and AI's job in this security realm, taking a secure first approach, which is what we always do, let's start talking about AI. And so, Kevin, what key factors determine if you're ready for implementation of AI?
So first, as we know, innovation has always been powered by the ability to access the most current information or data set. While physical libraries once served this same need, today's information landscape offers, digital access alongside an exponential volume of content or information and data. The abundance has been created challenges and sparked new approaches to organizing, cataloging, and engaging with information by individuals and teams across all industries as well as ours. So when we look at AI, we need to see how does this AI application actually impact our business to make it run more efficiently, more effectively? What problem are we actually solving? When you look at that business strategy, then you look at, okay, how am I going to monitor and make sure I'm getting the key KPI or the risks or the output that I'm looking at? How do I know if I'm successful on its implementation, and is it doing just what I need it to do? And then I also need to look at, am I actually ready for AI? is my data categorized, classified, secure? Do I have encryption? How do I contain the data within the environment to ensure that it doesn't get out in any reckless platform? Putting policies, procedures, and controls in place. And am I ready to turn it on for general use across the organization, specific users? These are all questions that you need to ask yourself when you're looking to incorporate AI. AI is going to be a great way to dig through deep data, data mining, and all kind of other valuable uses of it within your organization. But if you let it run rampant, you could open the door for all sorts of malicious activities. So that's where I would make sure that I'm consulting professional like myself and John Stevens, working with organizations to make sure it fits, and then put a strategy for implementation and use across the organization.
Yeah. So to summarize, to figure out if you need or can utilize AI safely and you're ready for it, you need to create the business case and business strategy around how you're going to use it, right?
That's
Then
it.
you're going to see what data you have and is affected by it, and make sure that it can actually do what you want it to do. And then you want to make sure that the data that you're going to put in there and the way that you're using AI is going to protect your business and not expose any of the secrets and things that are in there. And so those three pillars basically tell you if you're ready for AI. So moving on. In manufacturing is a great place to use AI because there's so many different use cases for it. But when we simplify it, there's a great way to look at it. And so what are some use cases for AI, Kevin, that you've seen in your everyday working life be applied?
Right. Well, having a background in manufacturing, I am Lean Six Sigma certified, right? So dealing with Six Sigma, there's a lot of things that you can use it for. So we talk about alerting. How do you get predictive statuses on orders, knowing when an order is ready to go out, prepared to go out, sending notifications to in and out of clients, detecting anomalies with shipments and receiving. When you look at productivity at a large scale, you're talking about automated quality inspections, the ability to know if your products are meeting the specifications that you laid out from the production line at a very quick pace, and determining if your DPM or defects per million are coming out within the established frameworks, like we talk about those KPIs. Another area, like we said, some of the benefits of this is reduced downtime on your alerting, faster responses to disruptions to the business, improved production planning, knowing what's coming in, when it's going to come in. From the productivity side, understanding higher quality of products, which translate to better satisfaction for your customers and clientele, which could relate to also improved business or higher business revenue, right? Continuous improvement. We can also look at procurement. How are you getting your materials, your raw materials, when they're coming in, getting shipment notifications, and making sure that your team is notified when that shipment arrives, knowing how to plan your production from that same aspect. We know when it's coming in, what time it's going to be there, and how to get it there, and having AI providing that information across the organization to better plan on your production line, your labor, your staff, who's going to be in on what shift, what time that line is going to run, and when it's going to complete. All of these things can be used to, as part of the metrics and visibility that your production and operations managers need to make your operation run much more efficiently and effectively across your production time.
Yeah, and in broad strokes, it creates a better working experience for your workers. It creates better products for your customers, and it allows the business to make more money. And so, a good use case of this is I've seen personally is being able to identify defects before it goes out the door. And so, at a direct consumer manufacturing that's shipping out, a client of ours that we have, they've been able to identify in real time defects that are happening and stop them before they actually go out to the client. Whereas years ago, that was just not possible. And so, through the correct use of AI, it's helped them improve the customer experience. With that being said, moving on, what else is possible with AI?
What we always talk about, and as you see here, whether you sense, think, and act, these are some of the major areas that AI can enable or help your business. When you think about how you're going to use it and apply it to your organization, you need to think about it, right? From a gathering data or a sense standpoint, you have to connect the devices all over your organization, whether it be from HVAC, whether it be directly from the machines themselves, the runtime indicators for maintenance and things like that. Those are things that can be used from a sense to inform, say, if your machine is running at a low rate and you're having an issue with your maintenance and you know it's coming up for maintenance, that may be an indicator that that's something to do. That sense translates into an identification or a note to your, say, your maintenance department to give you the analytics you need to validate the KPIs. You can dashboard that information to say, hey, it's starting to run low. I know I need to change a belt. I need to do something else. I need to switch up the production line. We're coming close to finish for this production line. That's another enablement thing, action. And all of that information together, excuse me, gives you the ability to act effectively or enables you to act effectively on the data that has been collected and preempt any issues. You see here, we talk about the industrial control systems. We also speak to, cyber physical integration, knowing if something's coming in, coming out. We often in the manufacturing industry, you use RFID to track pallets or track information inbound and outbound. That actually can be used by your AI systems or solutions to say where is the inventory at? When did it go out the door? Validating with the client, sending the notifications. All of these are actions that can be taken behind what has been sensed and manipulated through the AI platform.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this is the think, and it's the one that us sales guys usually don't do very well, is think. But it's being able to test different ideas through a model and how it might affect your business. And so we're seeing a lot of this adoption within the manufacturing industries today is to, what if I make these changes to my business model? What effects could that have on any one piece or part, whether it be financially, production times, etc. So it's really cool to think about. With that being said, moving on, walk us through the process of when you do use AI, what that looks like and why it needs to continuously happen. Again, just like security, AI is a journey and not a destination.
Roger that. Well, I always tell people that when you're using AI, you need to always keep that man in the middle to ensure that it's giving you the appropriate information, right? Don't just rely on it blind-heartedly, right? So in a real world situation, you're going to plug AI into your organization and you're going to gather data from a broad range of areas, consolidate that data and validate that you're getting what you want. In the midst of that, you have the machine learning or the AI generated insights. Now, this is just going to be the manipulation of the data, the reports that are generated, the dashboarding, and the visibility of that data in a single platform to say I have my production costs, my timeline, the orders that I'm looking at, and then I need to validate that that insight is giving me the actual information that allows it to be actionable. Then I turn around and I would actually take a person, engineer or architect, that can tell me, okay, based on the information that we have and the data set that we've created, we have these smart systems and automation that we can enable to automatically take this piece of the pie that I have validated and say, I can rely on this information coming back. I can use that to make it actionable to do some other process or to streamline a process so that I don't have to have a person trying to think through when they're going to order or what time it's going to order. I can actually have the system tell me because I validated that the information being received and manipulated is correct. And now my job becomes that much easier. Your team's job becomes that much easier by being able to be actionable and say, okay, I have this customer order going out. Customer service knows what's going on. Sales can anticipate what's happening. Seasonal changes to the environment are often visible through these same platforms. And once again, this is a cyclical process to say, rinse, wash, and repeat. Am I getting my information? Is it validated correctly? Am I using the insights from all of the data that I have around the organization to confirm what I have? And are my systems making it easier for me to do my job in less time and much more efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great points. I love the idea and the use cases around being able to interpret data that you never were able to before, to give you insights into the business of how it's performing, or where you can improve, or where you're even doing really well, to give employees recognition on a job well done. All those things are very important when looking at AI. But what I really find interesting is this validation point, where we need to validate the data, make sure that it is what it is before we implement and put it into the real world. So with that being said, we'll move on. When you are looking at AI, you are looking at cybersecurity, it's truly important to work with the right partner. And so here's some key takeaways. Whether it's internal resource that you're using from IT, that's implementing an AI system, or your cybersecurity posture, you want to work with somebody that has experience in manufacturing, years and years of experience in manufacturing, because they're built different. You want to work with somebody that has a history of delivering cybersecurity solutions at a complex level over and over again. Additionally, you want to work with somebody who's doing this for a very long time. And so if somebody's been doing it for 5 years, that's great. 10 years is really great. And anything over 10 is fantastic. So work with somebody that has a proven track record, that you can call the references to make sure that they are who they say they are. With that being said, I'd like to open it up to any questions. We have about 4 minutes left. I do not see any questions. Any other questions? All right, so if you need any help, I'm here. My name is Terry Kruger at Convergence Networks. You can find us at convergencenetworks.com. If you need anything else from us, we're here to help support you in your business growth, your business protection, and overall, business posture. We appreciate you coming out today, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.